Have you ever wondered if you've lived before or will live again? Are you curious about what happens to your soul after you die? Or maybe you've met someone you're sure you've known before. Or maybe you're just wondering if you have talents, skills, and experiences from a prior life that could help you now. Hi, I'm Brownell Landrum, author of the upcoming We Meet Again trilogy, and I'd like to welcome you to the Life is a Trip podcast. The following story, Preparing for Battle, was written by Arkansas Hall of Fame writer Garrett. It was inspired by an experience he had that felt too real not to be real. Let's see what you think.
Prepared for Battle, a True Life Experience by Garrett. I woke up in a muddy ditch, wet, cold, and stiff. Every joint in my body ached. The smell of bacon cooking and coffee brewing caused me to snap my head up and looked over the embankment in front of me. A roughly calloused hand grabbed me by the collar and dragged me back below the ridge line. "Stay down, boy," a whisper. I looked at the old sergeant holding me back. "Them's Yanks. They set up during the night." I ventured another quick look, careful not to show myself. A whole company had pitched tents, stabled their horses, and lined up their cannons. 3 12-pounder howitzers and 1 24-pounder. "Get ready to move out," the sergeant said. "Captain said them boys are so green he's going to call for a charge. Going to surprise 'em." I grabbed my rifle, a Sharps and Hankins .45, and checked to make sure the bore was clean. I had plenty of ammunition in my pouch, so I was ready for the next man. Lord, that bacon and coffee sure smelled good. I speculated the coffee would be thinned with roasted acorns, since I knew supplies were tight on both sides. During ceasefires, we sometimes called out to Billy Yanks and agreed to a truce so we could meet and trade this for that in the way of food rations and tobacco. We waited, me and the Sarge silent-like. Stiffness set in, my legs, and I longed for some of that hot coffee to ease the coldness of the morning dew that vexed me dearly. Somewhere along the way, I hadn't really noticed, but I started shaking from the cold and the damp. It got so bad my body was trembling, not like I had a case of the St. Vitus dancing jitters. "Take it easy, young fella. Ain't nothing to be scared about. I have it on good faith from General Lee himself that them Yankees can hit the broadside of a barn, even they were standing right in front of it." I wasn't really scared. At least I didn't think I was. I'd been in one firefight just before we reached Chickamauga. I felt I was battle experienced. No, pretty sure I was just shaking because of all the coldness in the swamp. In that first firefight, I hadn't really killed anyone. I just pointed my rifle at a moving target, fired, snapped the breech open, and reloaded a single bullet. When you're on the run, you don't stop to run a tally. You just pick the man closest to you and fire. If he goes down, well, he's either dead or just wounded. Time enough for counting after the battle stops. That bacon was sizzling so loud it sounded like a hornet's nest. My mouth started slobbering, and I bit my sleeve to get it to stop. I fumbled in my pocket and couldn't find a crumb of anything. Looking all around me, I smiled at the sight of a peach pit lying in the mud. I brushed it off against my jacket best as I could and slipped my bayonet out of my belt so I could crack the outer shell. Peach kernels are bitter things, but it took my mind off on what the Yanks was having for breakfast. I chowed down and it cracked into pieces. I didn't swallow right away, because then I'd be hungry again. In time, I worked up enough spit to swallow the tiny chunks and wish I'd found the whole peach instead of just the pit. "Get ready," the sergeant tapped me on the shoulder, and all thoughts of food vanished. I didn't feel stiff in the legs anymore. My whole body was tensed and ready for the charge. When it came, we all started yelling like jackasses and climbed up all over the ridge line. The Yanks were indeed taken by surprise and fumbled their way towards what they thought had stacked their rifles. I saw one blue belly holding a field pot of coffee, and I said, "Don't drop the coffee," just as somebody dropped him with a rifle ball. I made it to the first tent and stopped to reload. A blue uniform rushed out to meet me. We sort of looked at each other to convince ourselves that everything was happening and men on both sides were dying all around us. I dropped my rifle, and he dropped the bugle he had in his hands, and we sort of dove towards each other and hit the ground with our arms and legs locked around each other like two young boys tussling on the school grounds. This ain't no wrestling match, though, and somebody came flying past my head and stuck a bayonet in his back. He looked at me with a sorrowful look in his eyes, then toppled over on top of me. He wouldn't be blowing reveille this morning. Dead bodies lay all around the bivouac area, blue and gray alike. Smoke drifted across the wide expanse of marsh grass from fire pits that we had trampled in our rush to kill the enemy. I surveyed the pitiful scene around me and wondered if there was even a point to all this slaughter. I knew all those soldiers were just like me, different uniforms, but just regular guys. Formers, star keepers, maybe a school teacher or two. What was the point? That of something I've struggled with all my life. When will there be no more war? We were victorious this time. We gathered up what remained of the Yankees, disarmed them, and roped off an area for them to sit under 4 guards. Nobody spoke more than a few hushed words. I roamed free, not being assigned any particular duty. I knew what I wanted, and I found it. The coffee pot still had some liquid in it, and it was still hot. I sipped on what I poured into my canteen cup and followed my nose trying to find the bacon. Obviously someone had found it before me, but I did manage to find a couple hardtack biscuits and munched on one, stuffing the other into my tunic for later. I found the sergeant I shared the ditch with. He made it through alive, but caught a round in the shoulder area. "Can't hit the broadside of a barn," you said. It's just a scratch. I've had worse than this on a Saturday night in Savannah. I see you made it through. Yeah, don't ask me how. No, never ask how. Just be glad when you do. A fog rolled in as evening came. The air chilled and birds stopped singing. Everybody got kind of melancholy as we settled in for the night. It didn't take me long to rest my head on a saddlebag and cover myself with a shredded wool blanket. I woke to the smell of bacon, coffee, and biscuits coming from the kitchen. I rolled out of bed, tossed some water on my face, and walked stiffly down the stairs. My wife smiled at me as she handed me a cup and filled it full. Hot and black, just the way I like it. She motioned for me to sit at the table and handed me a plate. The eggs were scrambled, the bacon crisp, and she'd split open a couple of biscuits and spooned a ladle of sausage and gravy over them. What a dream, I thought as I reached for the Louisiana hot sauce. Or was it?
Thanks for listening to Preparing for Battle by Del Garrett. Del is a retired journalist who has written 7 novels and countless short stories. To reach him, his email is prowriter001@yahoo.com. Hi, this is Brownell. For more of these transcendental tales, please join the Life is a Trip group on Facebook and check out my amusing and enlightening story entitled The End, which you can find on my website, brownelllandrum.com. That's BROWNELLLANDRUM.com. And please look for my upcoming novel trilogy entitled We Meet Again. It's a story about a famous couple reincarnated today to help solve a centuries-old mystery that will change the world.